I quit. I can't do the full-time job, the family, and the channel all at the same time anymore. It's too much. I have to stop. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Black Magic Craft. Now, don't worry, relax. I did quit, but it doesn't mean what you might think it means. It's good news, and we'll get to that in a minute. With my home renovation project still in full swing, but getting there, don't worry, it's getting there. I haven't had any time at my workbench to build any terrain or paint any minis, so I'm taking this opportunity to do another Q&A video. I haven't done one of these for over a year. I really like doing them, and it's a great way for me to get through a lot of the stuff that you guys ask that I don't answer in videos, so we're gonna do that today. But before we do that, I'm gonna make a few channel announcements that actually answer a bunch of the questions that came up. The first thing is quitting. Well, for those of you following the channel for a very long time who saw my 2017 update, you know that this channel is a huge time resource sink. It takes up so much of my time. For the past 2 years, I've been working a full-time job, putting in tons and tons of hours into this channel, all while trying to balance family life, having no evenings, no weekends, no nothing for almost 2 years, and it got to be too much, and I couldn't do it anymore, and I had to stop something. Luckily, I didn't have to stop the channel. I stopped my job. That's right, I am officially a full-time content creator on YouTube. It's pretty crazy. Actually, this has been going on for a little while, and I haven't made an announcement to the general public. Only my Patreon supporters have known this. It's been about 3 months since I resigned from my job. At first, I kind of did a slow exit out to help them out, where I was still sticking around 1 to 2 days a week to kind of get them set up with a replacement and all that. But for the past while, I've been basically full-time. Then several weeks ago, I pulled the plug completely, and I've been giving this channel my full-time resources. And that's why longtime viewers will notice that over the past 3 months, my build videos have grown a bit in complexity. I've been able to do things that took a bit more time. I've been putting a lot more time into editing and learning about video production and all that other good stuff to try to improve the videos. And it's paying off. The channel is growing at an explosive rate. It's really crazy, and I have absolutely no fears that this whole crazy venture will pan out. I am doing just fine. However, that's because of the help of you guys, especially people on Patreon and the people using those Amazon links, paying for the, donating through the templates. All that has come together to allow me to be a full-time content creator on YouTube and dedicate my life to making these videos for the community. Pretty crazy, right? The other thing I wanted to address, a few people asked about this, is how my wife is doing, because when I did my 2017 update, I talked about her illness. She has Crohn's, she was off of work, it was really bad. I'm very happy to say that she is doing significantly better. The infusion drugs seem to be working. She's in remission and she is back at work, so that is phenomenal. I mean, it's not a disease that gets cured, it's just a disease that you get under control, but currently it is under control and she's doing very well, and I appreciate those of you who remembered that and asked about it when I polled you guys for questions. That means a lot. I got a lot of questions and I boiled them down to about 60, so I'm gonna try to power through them pretty quickly. I chose the ones that were what I thought were the most useful to answer, the ones that I thought would be the most informative and the most fun. There was a lot of overlap, so some questions are getting combined. A lot of the questions had to do with my job and carpentry and what I really do for a living. And like I said, I just quit my job, but my history of employment, just so you guys know, is I went to school for carpentry, but there's a lot of misconceptions about me being a carpenter. I wasn't like a fine woodworker. I went to school for carpentry, then I got into the renovation business, and for over a decade, I renovated houses doing custom kitchens and bathrooms, and I did every trade involved, start to finish. So I did the carpentry, I did minor electrical, plumbing, drywall, painting, flooring, finished carpentry, tile, set a lot of tile, did a lot of masonry work. I did it all. And that's what I did for a very long time. And then last year I took a job at a prestigious design build firm where I was a construction manager and I was overseeing huge construction projects, both residential renovations as well as commercial stuff. I mean, we're talking, I was renovating kitchens that were like $500,000 kitchens. So that's what I was doing up until recently. I just resigned from that. Now I'm full-time YouTuber. So when I say I'm a carpenter, I went to school for carpentry. I did a lot of carpentry, but I was involved in many trades in general that had to do with renovations. So that answers a bunch of your questions because there was a lot related to that. There was also a lot of questions that were really basic, and I want to remind you guys that I do have a basic series for beginners. I will put a link up there and in the video description. You guys, if you're new, you should check that out. One question I want to answer that didn't come up here, but I get asked it every few days in YouTube comments is, why don't you stream your games? We really want to see you streaming your games. I would love to, but there's a couple reasons I don't. What you don't realize, to do it of a good quality, it requires several cameras, microphones, and a crew. And those are resources and costs that the channel isn't quite ready to take on yet. I am not willing to just put up an iPhone and have a crappy sounding game streaming through the internet. I'd rather do nothing than do one that's of a crappy quality. Maybe one day I'll get there, but not yet. You wanna help me out? Try out Patreon and maybe one day I'll be able to stream the games. All right, so now let's get down to your real nitty-gritty questions. I'll try to power through them as quickly as I can while still giving informative answers. Here we go. How many of each type and size of tile do you think is a good place starter set versus ideal amount? This is a question that comes up quite a bit. This is going to depend on you. Everybody's needs are different, but the way I think about it is, look at your gaming surface. How big is the area that you play on? Is it 2 feet by 4 feet? Is it 3 feet by 3 feet? Whatever that size is, make enough tiles to completely fill that space. Maybe some extras in terms of turns and whatever, because you're not going to need more really than fills that whole space. Personally, my 3x3 tiles, my basic dungeon tiles, I only have like a dozen of them, plus maybe 4 6x6 tiles and 2 12x12s, and then all my extra kind of other style tiles, and that's enough for me. And just build more as you need it. What is the most used terrain piece you personally use gaming besides tiles? That's easy. That's these pillars. These pillars get used all the freaking time, and I'll put a link where you can watch the tutorial of how to build those. I also get a lot of use out of these little stones. They are little styrofoam stone pillars that get used as a placeholder for all sorts of things. They are fantastic. What building terrain or terrain pieces are essential for a good DM kit? What are some staple pieces that every crafter should add to their collection? Obviously the dungeon tiles, pillars, and rocks. Just make some rocks. You make different kinds. I got a video on these ones. These will get used all the time. Some basic trees or bushes are very, very handy. And dungeon stackers. Make a set of dungeon stackers, links up there and down there, because those can be used for pretty much anything, and then you can just build more as you need it. What would you say is the best project for a beginner's first campaign? If you're just starting out crafting, I think making the basic dungeon tiles is the best place to start. Gets you familiar with cutting foam and painting and that sort of thing. If you were starting out as a crafting DM today, what would you do differently and why? What I would do differently is take it easy on the amount of stuff I'm putting on the table in my early games. When I started out, I went full blown, and the first couple sessions I had these crazy elaborate setups. I spent months and months planning for my first game. That set a tone that was not easy to maintain for over the next several months of gaming. I couldn't keep up to that. So I would say don't go too overboard at the beginning, and don't set up, your players to expect that every single time. Just ease into it. Use some terrain, use some battle mats, use some theater of the mind, use a mix. That way there won't be this expectation that every 5 minutes you'll have some crazy new diorama on your table. What would you consider the most overlooked but useful piece of equipment that you use for crafting. That is my Carpenter's T-square, my small T-square. It's over there. I don't want to get up and grab it. I'll put a link. It's in my essential equipment store. That T-square is so important for doing layouts and getting perfect 90-degree angles. It's a perfect metallic straight edge for cutting. Everybody should have a small Carpenter's T-square, not just for crafting, but just in life. It's a good tool. What crafting skills you gained through terrain crafting were you able to transfer to your real life, and how? And that's an interesting question, because usually it's my day job real life stuff that I transfer to crafting, but what have I done in the reverse? And actually there was a few times doing renovations where I had to do really delicate touch-ups, like cabinets or furniture or wood or whatever that had damage on it, and I needed to color match and do very fine detailed touch-ups. I more than once went home to my workbench and grabbed some fine detail brushes and some paints and mixed colors and was able to do on-site repairs using the skills I learned painting miniatures. What do you do with minis that are too big for the 1-inch base, but the monster manual needs them to be that size? So basically you got a monster that's statted to take up a 1-inch base, but the model is too big. Well, here's the thing. I just put it on a bigger base. I ignore the monster manual, I ignore the stats, because 90% of the monsters I use anyway, I homebrew or I alter. I never use a monster straight out of the book. Never. I always customize it to my own game and my own needs. So don't worry about it. Just put it on a bigger base that suits the model, and hey, the stats are, it's a bigger size creature. Who cares? What 3 creations are you most proud of? Well, my child, my home, no. In terms of crafting, I would say my guard tower is one that I am really proud of. I'll put a link, there's a video on that. The Dark Chapel, Sinister Cathedral, put a link to that. And I think my Cadaver Collector Mini. I'm really, really proud of that one. And I will, again, put a link for that build. I'm really happy with that one. What's up with brushes? I kind of just grab a brush and use it, but what's the difference between the different brushes, and how do I know what I should be using? Is there a dummy proof, just use this brush 90% of the time answer? Ignoring mini painting, because that's a whole other thing and I'm not an expert on that. But for terrain building, just, you're right, just grab whatever works. 90% of the time you're going to be wanting to use a flat chisel brush to cover large areas, and for dry brushing use a big flat chisel brush. Honestly, don't overthink it. It's just terrain. How thin should a foam sheet be to be able to bend it into a curve? How do you cut it thin enough? I mean, it depends on the foam. Usually even foam core, which is about 3/16 of an inch thick, you can bend on a curve. It depends how sharp you want that curve. For something really sharp, you want to be shaving down the foam to like a 1/16 of an inch or a couple 2 millimeters, something like that. And to cut foam that thin, you need, no way around it, a hot wire table and a high rip fence. So I use my Procs on and my Shifting Lens Guider Pro. What crafting skills of yours have you derived from carpentry that the average crafter should learn? Basic measurement and layout skills, understanding how to lay out a square. It's pretty incredible. Most people don't know how to lay out a square. You should be able to, on a blank piece of paper, in any orientation, right in the middle, be able to lay out a perfect square with right angles. It's basic carpentry layout 101, straight line, perfect 90-degree angle, measure off, make the square. I have a video that talks about that in more detail, the basics of cutting a square, and I think every crafter should know that basic skill, just basic geometry. What was your introduction to D&D? What was your age, group of friends, etc.? I haven't been playing D&D that long. I've only been playing 2.5 years, something like that. A friend of mine wanted to get into it, wanted to start playing it. We were playing Magic the Gathering a lot together. Him and his wife wanted to do it. She decided to run some games. I said, sure, why not? I played a couple games as a player. I was hooked. I wanted to DM. And as soon as I made the decision to DM, I knew I wanted to start building cool things because I've always had an interest in model making and that sort of thing. So here we are. Haven't been doing it that long. Favorite Timbit? Let me tell you about Timbits. Timbits are a waste of time. Give me a proper donut. I don't want that little donut hole ball. I want a real Donut, especially because the best donut is a Boston cream or a jam buster. You need the full donut to get the yummy, gooey insides. What's your preferred way to seal, prime, and paint cork? I don't use cork. I don't like cork as a crafting material. It is way too prone to warping and it's brittle. I just don't like it. I mean, you can seal it with glue or Mod Podge, but it's gonna warp and I just don't use it. Next page. How much time per week do you spend crafting? Well, that obviously varies. In the past, when I was working full time, you know, I was spending maybe 10, 12 hours a week crafting. Most of the time I spent was editing videos and all the other stuff related to channels, but about 10 to 12 hours a week crafting. Now I spend significantly more. It can be 20 to 30 hours a week when I'm doing more involved builds for the channel and videos, and then also doing some just stuff for myself on the side. I might spend 20 hours in the week building something for the channel, and then another 10 just painting miniatures to unwind for myself. Besides an upgraded fence for the Procs, what, if any, other jigs or attachments do you use most? Definitely the circle cutter, that is number 2. There is also the shape tool. I don't remember what it's actually called. It allows you to cut hexagons and different shapes like that. I don't use it very often, but it's very handy. Aside from the Procs add-ons, the other shifting lines things that I use the most are the cork board, which I reviewed, and the paint bottle holder because it's holding my paint 24/7. Do you still use the green stuff rollers to do textures? Which ones do you use the most? I use them once in a while, not as much as before because now I have a little bit more time. I'm not as pressed. I don't have to do speed builds all the time. So I do prefer to do the individual bricks, but once in a while it's still really handy. Absolutely, the brick texture one, hands down, is the most useful. The normal size, don't get the smaller sized one. It's kind of too small for foam. And actually, I use them a lot more now for their intended purpose on green stuff on miniature bases. Where do you go to find inspiration for campaigns? Nowhere specifically. I guess I just draw on the various kind of subconscious inspiration from all the movies and TV shows that I watch regularly or have watched throughout the years. One place I do actively seek inspiration is I will go on to DriveThruRPG and I will look at all the indie titles and I'll just download a bunch of free or cheap one-shot short adventures, read them over, take a few things that I like and kind of mash them together and make them my own. Do you do any dungeon tiles with traps on the bottom, flip the tile over and boom, pit trap? No, I don't do flip tiles. I don't do two-sided tiles, just for my own reasons. I do have trap tiles that I have built on the channel before, and they are 3x3 trap tiles that replace the tile rather than flipping one over. Again, link if you want to check out how to make those. What has the Blackmagic Craft journey been like thus far? Ups and downs, pros and cons, and would you do anything differently if you could do it all over? A short recap of the overall Pillow Pow experience. That's a thoughtful question. It's been a crazy 2 years. I started the channel on a whim, just for the hell of it, and I really got into it. After a couple months, I realized it was serious and I started treating it seriously. I started treating it like a business. I started working really hard. The last year and a half has been really, really challenging. It's been a huge strain on my family, my wife going through a serious illness, having a toddler, having the channel, working a stressful job. It's been hard. Probably the last year and a half was the most difficult years in my life. On top of that, there was a lot of death in the family. My grandpa passed away. And on the day I was at my grandpa's funeral, I got a text saying my best friend had committed suicide. So there's some downers for this video. So needless to say, the last year and a half has been very, very challenging, but the way I dealt with that was by working my ass off because that's how I deal with everything. I work really hard and I just go 110%. And that's what I've done. And now this year, this past 3 months have been the best 3 months of my entire life because I'm living the dream doing this full time. And that's because I worked so friggin' hard and persevered through so much difficulty. I didn't miss a single episode. I never took a break. No, even when I was going through the illness and the deaths and the kit, I never stopped, got a video every week, worked my butt off, and now I'm reaping the rewards. So that's how you deal with life. Work hard, you'll get there. What is your favorite thing to do or watch so you can unwind after a long gaming session or a hard long build or workday, or maybe what's most importantly, why? I used to watch a lot of TV shows. There was a lot of series that I was into, obviously Game of Thrones, Vikings, those sort of shows, tons of Netflix dramas, Stranger Things, whatever. Since we had a kid and I started this channel, we have not really watched much movies and TV whatsoever. 95% of my viewing is YouTube. I unwind in bed at the end of each day watching YouTube. Some of my favorite things to watch have nothing to do with crafting or this hobby, although I do watch, you know, all my fellowship brothers and sisters, but I tend to watch a lot of non-D&D stuff. I really enjoy Good Mythical Morning with Rhett and Link. They are my YouTube heroes and I love their content. I like watching a lot of food shows like Bon Appetit and Sorted Food. I love watching Tested because I love Adam Savage and the way he approaches things. So yeah, I watch a lot of YouTube. Ever considered attempting to model some World of Warcraft terrain or structures? Nope, because I've never played World of Warcraft, never seen the movie, don't know anything about it, and am not interested. Sorry. Do you find that your knowledge of carpentry helps you design your builds? Absolutely, 100% without a doubt. My son and some of my friends are game, but how do I get started? Just buy the DM book and go from there, or do I need to write down my own story? I already play war games, so models and scenery are no problem. First of all, you don't need to make your own story. You can if you want. It's personal preference. And you don't even need to buy all the books. If you want to play 5th edition, you want to play D&D, just buy the starter box. It has a short adventure in it that's already pre-planned for you. It even has pre-generated character sheets and a basic rule set, so nobody needs to buy the player's handbooks or the monster manual, anything like that. That one $30 box, 30 bucks or whatever it is all you need to get started. And if you like it, you can grow and buy more things as you get into it. Is there going to be a tutorial on making the waterboard as seen in the longboat video, or was there already one and I somehow missed it? I'm sorry guys, I promised that video when I made it and I still have not made it, mostly just because I just haven't felt like making another one. It's a bit of a messy build, but basically I'll sum it up for you here. Piece of blue styrofoam, thick, at least an inch thick so it's sturdy. Take a drywall joint compound, add a bunch of water, add some PVA glue, mix it up till it's thin enough to spread over the whole board, then take a wet paint roller and roll it over that texture to give so the nap from the roller gives it that texture of little waves. Let that dry, spray paint the whole thing blue, dry brush all the little tiny ridges very lightly with white to look like the crest of waves, and then spray the whole thing in a high gloss varnish and you're done. And that's how I made that waterboard. Maybe one day I'll make another one, but I just, for whatever reason, am not interested in making another one. How can you adjust the length of terrain to not be huge like in Storm King's Thunder? I can't figure out how to make a map playable and not be 10 feet long. Well, that's because you're trying to make the whole map. Don't make the whole map. Just do a little bit at a time. Just place on the board the part that the players are in. My gaming surface is only 3x3, so everything fits in the 3x3 space. Put down the tiles, put down the scenery, put down whatever for that particular part, and then when they move on, put the next. Treat it like a side-scrolling video game. Well, a top-scrolling, I guess. Why have you started crafting? The reason I started crafting is that previously I was a musician and all my time was dedicated to producing and recording music. We had a baby. I couldn't be loud in the studio anymore. I couldn't be traveling for music. So I needed to stick around home and I needed a quiet hobby. Like I said earlier, my friends got me into D&D, and so I started doing that. It was a great hobby because it was quiet and I could just put it down and walk away when the wife and kid needed me. And then I got so addicted, took over my whole life. I know it takes a long time to build such things and life goes on while we're at it. So how do you manage your family, hobby, and job? Well, like I said, it was really hard over the past couple of years. I'm very good at time management. Being a construction manager taught me how to manage time very, very well. Being a contractor taught me how to think smart with my builds, knowing I have to do this now so that it dries and is ready for tomorrow to save me some time. You got to really think about that stuff ahead of time so that you can be super, super efficient. That's why a lot of the stuff I do focuses on efficiency. Luckily now I have a little bit more time to spare. If you are running a homebrew campaign, how do you start? What do you need to make a good night of adventure? I typically run homebrew adventures. My advice is don't think about the huge world and all the politics and religions and all that. Just think small. When I started my homebrew world, I started in a village. First session in a village, all the characters are from that village, and myself and no one else knew anything about the greater world. And my world built as they explored, and each time I was prepping for a session, I expanded on the world a little bit. Think small, think micro, not macro, because micro is the most important thing for a good night of gaming. How often do you play D&D and how long are your gaming sessions? Well, my group that I DM for shoots to play about every 3 weeks. But over the summer that falls apart and we play like every 4 to 6 weeks. People in, Canadian summers, you got to take advantage of them. People spend the weekend at the cabins. They got projects going on, all sorts of things. There's a lot of holidays and whatnot, so we don't play very often. But in the winter, when it's dark and cold and miserable, we play about every 3 weeks when we can. I also am a player in a game that follows about the same schedule. How long are your gaming sessions is another question on here somewhere. And we used to play like for 4 to 6 hours, and we realized that people were burning out and getting tired. Now we shoot for like 3-hour games, and I find that those are perfect. That keeps everybody excited, on their toes. 3 hours is about perfect. Maybe about 4 hours of hanging out to account for all the other stuff like eating and drinking, bathroom breaks and whatnot. But about 3 hours of gameplay is ideal for my group at least. For a layout like Castle Ravenloft, how might you go about creating thin walls to match the dimensions given in Curse of Strahd cardboard? I don't make walls, and I typically don't use pre-generated maps. With my tiles, I use the negative space in between them, the 1-inch space of negative space to represent shared walls. Doesn't work for a lot of pre-made maps. And for something like Castle Ravenloft, I would just be doing one room at a time with tiles or doing bigger areas on a battle map. I think that's the way to go. Do you use a 3D printer? If so, what brand? I do not. However, I've become increasingly more interested in them because they are getting very cost effective. I will get one, and I'm not going to get a filament one. I'm going to get a resin 3D printer. And I don't remember the name of it offhand. I researched it. I know which one it is. One day I'll get a 3D printer. What piece of equipment do you wish you could buy? There's not actually a lot. I will get a 3D printer eventually. Like, it's not a matter of cost. It's just I don't have time to dedicate to learning that new aspect of the hobby right now. I will at some point, but in a perfect world, I would love a big, huge shop that has one of those industrial CNC foam cutters. That would be pretty nifty. What do you believe is the most common mistake new crafters make? One, I think, in terms of crafting DMs, I think it's overdoing it and trying to build too much for their games, but just in general crafting, it's melting styrofoam with using aerosol that you should not use and not testing on foam, and also just getting things that are warped and then going, why did my thing warp? It's like, well, if you put wet things on cardboard or glue that shrinks, it's gonna warp. Learn about those materials and what causes warping. Would you ever do any conventions? Yeah, I would. I would like to do. I think as the channel grows, that's something that's going to happen in the future. It's a little bit more difficult for me being in Canada because most of the big conventions are in the States, and it's actually a little bit complicated to travel as a guest or a presenter with visas and whatnot. And I don't have. One day I will. It's not yet. Maybe soon. Maybe, I think next year I'm going to go to Gen Con. Have you ever considered making a DM screen to look like tabletop scenery? Absolutely not. I really dislike those big, massive DM screens that look like castles. I think they are a huge distraction, a visual. They're in the way visually. I think it's pointless. I don't like it. If you want to do it, cool, but you won't see one of those on my table. How do you prioritize your projects? Build what I need for the game. Will it make the gameplay better? Or is it really needed to play out the scenario? Then make that first. If it's just something fun that you want to do, that gets made last. Do you make your own music for the videos? No, I don't. The early videos with the old intro and intro music, I did compose that myself, but lately I don't have time and I'm not interested. I don't feel like making music these days. I do pay a lot of money for the music that I use now. Over the last several months, you may have noticed an improvement on the music. I used to use the same Kevin MacLeod music that 100 other channels use, and I was so sick of hearing them. So now I actually pay for expensive music licenses and get higher quality music for my videos, because that's important to me. Ever thought about making a Discord channel? I've thought about it quite a bit, mostly as a Patreon reward, but to be honest, I've never used Discord. I don't know much about it. I'm an old man. Some of these new things confuse me. I still don't fully understand how to use Twitter. I'm good at YouTube and I'm good at Facebook, but Discord, I don't really fully understand what it is yet. I'll probably do one at some point. After buying a 4x8 sheet of pink foam board, how do you break it down into manageable pieces? I don't know why people have such a hard time with this. You just cut it. Take the 4x8 sheet, go to the parking lot, take a knife, cut it, snap it, throw it in your car, in the trunk. Just cut it. And if you mean getting it down to smaller pieces to use on your Procs on, because you don't want to be using massive pieces, straight edge and an Olfa knife. How does one get clean cuts with thicker foam like 1-inch pink foam? Well, I have a video on how to get clean cuts in foam. When it gets to thicker foam and you want nice cuts that are plumb, you got to use a hot wire table. There is other ways that are really convoluted and complicated that hot wire table, I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you there was a better way. Once a piece is on the table, how long is it there? I just finished the Sinister Chapel video and it doesn't exactly have a huge floor plan. How long did the party explorer stay in near this place? How many set pieces are on the table at any time? A piece like the Sinister Chapel, actually, for me, when I first used it, ended up on the table for the whole night of gameplay, or most of it. And that's because there was the encounters leading up to it. So it was there as an exterior, and then they got inside and, you know, spent maybe an hour of gameplay inside as a big encounter and exploration took place. I've used that piece multiple times anytime I need a church or a chapel, but that's why I say don't make your buildings and stuff too complicated. Don't spend too much time on them, because no, you're not going to get 100 hours of gameplay out of one thing. It's going to get sporadic use. It's going to be on the table for a couple hours. So put in an amount of work that you think is appropriate for something that's going to see that much play. What game setting do you use when you run D&D? Well, for the longest time, I used my own homebrew setting. Started a new campaign, we're about 3 sessions in, and I have been running that one in Forgotten Realms, but it's taking place up in the north in Demera. Just felt like using some Forgotten Realms stuff for a while. How do you avoid disappearing detail when giving the models coats of paint? I always have a loss of sharp edges and fine gaps, but if I add water, the paint doesn't cover well. I have the same problem with Mod Podge. You have to thin, like for miniatures, you have to thin your paint. And yes, the water will make it not cover as well. Thin multiple coats. For terrain, I don't really water stuff down. I don't water down the Mod Podge. I just try to apply it evenly. And the answer is carving with stronger detail. Make your detail stronger to account for that loss. What is the worst experience you've had DMing? So Nikki, if you're watching this, sorry, I gotta apologize in advance. It involves you. I ran the Sunless Citadel. I felt like running a pre-published thing, and turns out, I didn't know this ahead of time, one of my players had actually DM'd that adventure years previously, and that really ruined it for me. That put me in a bad place as a DM. It shouldn't have. There are ways that you as a player can play something you've already run or played through before, but it didn't work out that way. It kept coming up in the game of, oh, I know what's here, or this wasn't like this when I did it. So that was really defeating, and it was a real bummer. I did massively change it. I completely changed the whole adventure. The second half of it, I made 100% unique, but it still became a problem of the player saying, well, that's not how it was when I did it. And it's like, well, yeah, I changed it because you've played this before. And that was overall not a good experience. So DMs, if that happens, try to pivot and adjust. And players, if you find yourself at a table and you've played that adventure before, or you've run it before, be a good player and don't let it get in the way. Don't make it a big deal. Act as though you haven't played through it before. Try not to use too much meta knowledge. As a crafting DM, how do you compensate for the downtime between setups? Like when a party goes into a new room that you need to set up for, just tell everyone to leave for 5 minutes while you set up. One, it's planning, having stuff on the table for the first area, and then stuff set up on a back table so you can quickly swap, and just getting good at quickly setting things up. But when there's a massive change, yeah, basically you just take a break for a minute. I try to have my players not take bathroom breaks, drink breaks, food breaks during game, and kind of save it. So every hour or so when I need to set up something new, it's like, okay, let's pause for a couple minutes. Everybody hit the bathroom, refill your drinks, that sort of thing. And then they come back and I'm ready to go again. How would you approach playing with flying monsters like dragons? That's not something that comes up very often in my games for some reason. When it has come up, we just theater of the mind, the really high flying stuff, and then when it gets lower, using plastic, like wine glasses or whatever, cups stacking, and then when it's lower, just empty dice boxes. How do you transition between theater of the mind and 3D terrain, and when? You just do. You just say, just be a DM and start describing stuff in great detail, and then all of a sudden you're in theater of the mind. How is your Kickstarter going? Did I miss it? No, you didn't miss it. And for those that don't know what they're talking about, I had planned on doing a Kickstarter for some resin cast dungeon doors. It was going to be something to help me raise money to quit my job and create a buffer, but I realized I didn't need to. And I realized that that Kickstarter would be really successful. It would have taken off. I would have made probably a bunch of money, but then I would have had to fulfill a ton of orders, and it would have been a full-time job casting resin for months on end, and I wouldn't have the time to dedicate to the videos. That was the whole point. So I put that on hold. I probably will revisit it, but rather than doing a Kickstarter and trying to sell as many as possible, I'm probably just gonna spend a week or two casting a bunch. It'll be a limited run. However I make in that time is what I have available. I will put them online, and it's first come, first serve. That's probably what I'll do. Do you miss the music life? Not really, not at all. Music life sucks. It could be a very negative place, and it's very tiring, and traveling. Nope, not at all. I would like to start my own crafting videos, and I was already following Scotty Wylock, DMG, Blanco, and more. I plan to craft monster minis, terrain, and real-size RPG weapons, armor for cosplay. My question would be, how do I start? Just start. There's no magic answer. Pick up your smartphone, film some videos, use some free editing software, put it on the internet. There. Go watch the first episode of Black Magic Craft. That's all it is. I had no idea what I was doing. I was a new crafter, shot a video with my iPhone, edited it on iMovie, uploaded it. Here I am. Just start. Do you have someone helping you for shooting and editing your videos, or are you doing everything by yourself? Oh, I wish I had some help. But I'm doing everything 100% by myself, which can be very challenging because I'm shooting all the talking head stuff with a DSLR, and you know what? It's hard to focus on yourself and adjust things and know if there's a problem while also talking. One day I'll get a real intern. Do you plan to release a new episode of your DM Diaries anytime? I really like those and would love to see or hear how the adventure continued. Maybe. I actually do now instead session recaps where I show my setups and talk about them kind of candidly after each session, but I make that a Patreon only reward because it's nice to give those folks who give me my money something special. Could you go over the process of how you made your gaming table? I built it. I went to Home Depot, I looked at lumber, I envisioned a table in my head, I bought the lumber, I came home, I built it in like 2 to 3 hours. There's no plans, nothing, it's really simple. Sorry, I don't have plans for it. However, I am planning on doing a little bit of a game room overhaul sometime in the next couple months, and I do plan on building a new game table because there's a lot of things after using it that I want to improve upon. That time I'm going to document that process for YouTube. What is the most important tool you use? There is no single most important tool. My Olfa knife, sharp knife, Procs on. Those are the 2 most important things probably. Any suggestion for someone trying to grow their YouTube channel? Please help. Well, I mean, again, there's no magic answer, but you have to make good quality videos that are engaging, easy to follow, edited well. They don't have a lot of you got it? Cut, edit, learn to be entertaining, shoot at a good quality, all that good stuff. Then after that, gotta work on branding, have recognizable branding, promote it in groups, and most importantly, be consistent. You can't put up a video every 3 to 6 weeks and hope that your channel grows, because it won't. Unfortunately, with the YouTube algorithms, you have to be consistent. That's why for the past 2 years, I've had a video every single Friday, rain or shine, no matter what. And now I'm also doing videos on Tuesday. Consistency is really important on YouTube. Do you have any suggestions on what mini you should start attempting to paint on? Skeletons. First mini you should paint is skeletons, 100%. When you start an idea for your crafting projects, do you have a budget planned for the build? If so, what do you do to help stay within the allotted budget? I don't have a budget, and people ask me about the cost of my stuff a lot of the time. I make stuff that costs pennies to make. Making things out of styrofoam uses like no material. There's initial setup in some tools and supplies, but after that, I don't think about the budget of my builds because calculating it would be pointless and really a difficult exercise. There's the odd time when I go out and buy a few special things for a build, but it's never very much money. I don't think about it. The whole point of this is to do it cheap and not worry about cost. That's the last question. That's it, guys. That is 60 questions answered, plus a whole bunch of channel updates. I really appreciate those of you who stuck with me through to the end. I don't know how long this video is at this point. It's probably pretty lengthy. I hope you enjoyed it. I promise I will eventually get back to building more things and doing more tutorial videos. Please bear with me while I got some real life build projects on the go, and I'm still trying to make engaging content for you guys. In the meantime, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, drop me more questions in the YouTube comments. If you have questions for me, I will say that emailing me directly is the worst way to get your question answered. If you post questions in the YouTube comments, there's far more chance it'll get answered because those are publicly visible. And I like answering questions that other people can then see. If you just email me directly, then I gotta take time out of my day to answer your question just for you, and it helps no one else in the process. I prefer to help as many people out at the same time as possible. So post your questions in YouTube comments, on the Facebook page, in groups, whatever, but direct messaging and emailing is not ideal. I only reply to the ones that I think are absolutely crucial or easy to respond to. That's it for this week, guys. Cheers, happy crafting.